for the people that are in this group and there's no censoring in this group or anything like that, they are thinking, all right, listen to the show, which will be last week for them. And, I've got all these dangerous devices in my house, and now I realize the wiring is dangerous. I may or may not be sensitive, but the damage is happening. If you were going to make the ideal electromagnetically frequency-wise safe in a house, to make it completely safe, you'd have to turn off all the power, right?
I mean, practically, I would say even remove all the gadgets and the wiring and so on to really be sure.
Wow.
But that will also kind of move you backwards in time too much. And
unless you come up with alternative technologies to take
exactly. But I mean, if you're electro-hypersensitive, I don't need to lecture for a person because they know what they react to and what kind of gadgets they have needed to remove already. But for a normal, healthy person, I would start with things based on radio communication. Like cell phones, tablets, baby alarms, etc. Maybe it's better to have the baby, for instance, in the same room as you are, and you can watch it all the time. That's the way my mother and father did it in the 1940s and 50s and 60s. So that worked very well.
Baby monitors are very dangerous, right?
Well, I mean, they are at least unnecessary. You don't need them. You just have your baby next to you,
This is the convenience trap that people fall into.
And that goes with everything. I always tell people, couldn't you start checking your home, asking yourself, do we have to brush our teeth with electric toothbrushes, or could we use a manual, old-fashioned one? Do I have to whip the cream with an electric device, or could I do it by hand? And so on. And when they have gone through all the gadgets and kept the necessities, no one could claim later on that I didn't know, because they were told to really go through and check. And when, for instance, arrive in homes, I was recently doing measurements in a home here in Stockholm, the number of electric and electromagnetic gadgets they had, and which they didn't even use. They were covered with thick dust, baking machines, ice cream machines, and so on, so on, so on, And I said, they are all plugged into the wall. I could measure the electromagnetic fields from everyone. Why don't you just remove them? I see from their dirt that you don't use them. And just throw them out, and then start to go through all the other gadgets and ask these simple questions.
But they might say, well, I turned it off. What's the problem?
No, I mean, yeah, exactly. But when you show them with a simple meter that they are turned off, but wow, they still generate various forms of electromagnetic signals, then they believe you. Then they see for sure. So it's good for anyone to bring such a simple, cheap meter. We're talking about $30, $40, $50 for such a meter, and bring it with them, and just show, hey, look here. And then they realize that, wow, we need to remove it.
What about devices? So what happens to your cell phone when you switch it off? What's it doing?
Mostly when you switch it off, and it's like a ladder, it doesn't happen very much. It will still have different active, for instance, Wi-Fi signals and so on. So you need to measure again and really make sure that when you switch off, it really switches off all the functions. And generally, you need to actually remove the battery.
And they make the new phones so that you can't remove the battery.
Exactly. I mean, and you cannot turn off the Wi-Fi and so on. I mean, it's scary in a sense. But then, of course, you always in your garage or work shed, you have a hammer, so you can still destroy it.
You can adjust it that way.
Yeah, you can adjust it. That's the word, You can adjust it,
Right. And they're charging, like $700, $1,000 for some of these phones.
Yeah, I know.
It makes people reluctant to adjust them with hammers.
Yeah, exactly. I know. But I mean, still, when I sort of take my last breath, I could still sense, that, well, I did my very best. I did inform everyone, including the posh lady we talked about in the commuter train. Even if she got very angry, I did inform. I did teach the facts to her, and I would hate to come to the pearly gates with St. Peter and he would tell me that, Olle, why didn't you speak up? You had all the knowledge and facts. Why didn't you try to talk to people? It's better it says, that, Olle, you did your very best. You failed, but you did your very best.
Yeah, and that doesn't apply to just telling people these things. It applies to all your efforts to do some kind of good while you're alive in a physical body, right?
Yeah.
All right, so there's these little bags that you put the phone in. Yeah. And they're supposedly Faraday cages that make them safe. Yeah. What do you think of those?
All of them work well. There is one British company called Microshield, but I would still go for the Swedish company because the reduction of these cases is quite dramatic, and you could still have it and use it. So it will be a compromise between not being able to use it at all and being highly exposed.
So that's the rpofsweden.com.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah.
And they have something that you put the phone in and you can still use it?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's in there. That's amazing. Okay.
So, and then the future can only tell us if that's enough from a health point of view.
Right.
Maybe you need to, if I could borrow your words, to adjust it with a hammer,
Yeah.
Maybe that's the only way to do it. But then I welcome any inventor that, as I said, sits right now, hopefully in a Swedish car garage, inventing tomorrow's technology.
Right, so because if there is a sticker that you can put on your phone that works, that's fine. But
there isn't yet.
Not so far.
No stickers and no, these rods and pendulums and so on. Nothing of that works.
Yeah, because you tested them.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, now what about your laptop computer or even a desktop computer? I mean, you can switch off the internal Wi-Fi and the internal Bluetooth functions.
Yeah.
After that, how bad are they?
It's very difficult to say. And again, it's really an adult decision of every adult to make for themselves. Again, looking at the computer, asking themselves, do I really need this? If the answer is yes, then I would do, as you said, try to turn off the Wi-Fi, the Bluetooth, maybe shield the whole laptop. For instance, again, with this Swedish company in mind, the RP of Sweden, and to do as good as I can.
Right.
But I don't want to sort of put myself on any high horse, but when you see what people actually use their laptops and stationary computers for, it's not that impressive, Maybe they could find ways to entertain themselves in real life. I think it's called IRL. Maybe
IRL is like it's fast disappearing in the distance as a myth from the past.
I know, but I mean, I could just look at myself. I take long walks. I love meeting animals like dogs, cats, birds, and so on. Today I had 4 hours of bowling practice at my bowling alley, and that's all without a computer screen in front of me.
You talking about bowling like on the grass outside?
Yeah, well, this is indoors.
And they don't have Wi-Fi going on?
Maybe they have, and I need to check that, of course, but I'm not electro-hypersensitive, so I don't sense anything like that. But that's a very, very important question. But at least you have got rid of your own gadgets.
Oh, I totally agree. And
you cannot. you control your neighbors, sort of, you know.
No, they get upset with you if you try to do that. But
Yeah.
yeah, and what you brought up in the main show is two really important things that aren't usually looked at. One is the hypersensitive people. If you take away enough to make them feel okay, that doesn't mean they're not being damaged.
No.
There could still be a lower threshold
Yeah.
that's happening that they don't feel.
Yeah, they could still end up, 30, 40 years. Yeah, 30, 40 years from now on, both them as well as I and you could end up, for instance, with a brain tumor.
Which gets diagnosed as no cause.
Exactly, yeah. So.
And they're trying, modern science tries to promote this idea that things don't have cause and effect.
Yeah. But there are, as you know, some pretty big studies, especially from the United States, that points to that there is an association. And some of this is the basis for the World Health Organization cancer classifying both power frequent magnetic fields as well as radio frequency fields, the latter for brain tumors, the previous for childhood leukemia. Right.
And in the main show, we were bringing up this idea of control groups. Like, you know, it's really hard to find a control group of humans anymore that has had no exposure. Yeah. But there was a lady on our show recently named Joy Garner who started a group and a project called the Control Group. Thecontrolgroup.com, if you ever want to look. Yeah. And she wanted to ask the same question for vaccines and say, is there a correlation between incidence of, you know, any one of these 20 diseases and being vaccinated? Yeah. And the control group for that was almost gone. Yeah. But 1/4% of the people in the US maybe have no vaccination. And so she's, without funding, she set up her scientific experiment, not as a new study, but a retrospective study, because the data was already there on CDC for all the exposed people. And she did the survey to get the data from all the unvaccinated people. And there was like a 99% correlation. And now she's trying to use it for a lawsuit to stop people from saying you have to be vaccinated. And I'm just looking at this because there could be an analogy between that and what might be done with EMF radiation. True indeed. Correlation. And, you know, from my point of view, being a Swede, I read today, actually, that when a child in the United States reaches 2 years of age, it has had 72 jabs of different vaccines. Right. In Sweden, they would have, well, probably less than 10, maybe even as few as 5, 6, 7. Yeah. So the question is, of course, from a design point of view, how come that American babies are so weak and Swedish babies evidently are of a Viking type, not needing so many inoculations? Well, correlation doesn't determine which direction is causation. No. So they may have created a weak class of babies in the U.S. with all the vaccines and drugs. Or is it just profit driven by the big pharma? I think at their level, that's the reason. Yeah. And they're trying to make it hundreds more vaccines. Yeah. I mean, I don't know the English word for the nåldyna, you know. You have a small thing you put all in when you sew. And babies are becoming like such a nåldyna with a lot of... and they call it pin cushion. Yeah, pin cushion, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, where should we stop? At 150 vaccines, 200, 500? Yeah. How much? Now with the fake pandemic that is a complete fraud, they're saying that every person in the whole world needs to have a vaccine. And then they thought, wait a minute, why should we just do this once? That's crazy. Yeah. So now they're saying maybe every person in the world has one every month. Yeah. And also they here in Sweden and maybe where you are talking a lot about that if you want to travel
You need to have documents proving that you have taken this vaccine.
Yes.
But, with the number of vaccines and the number of occasions, this book with the documentation will weigh far more than your suitcase eventually.
Well, they have solved that because what they've got is what's called quantum dot, and they're going to inject the recording device into your body as a liquid that can't be surgically removed. Because it permeates the tissues. And that will carry the record of vaccines and all that stuff. So I don't think they have very good intentions. So
I'm happy, and I know this sounds very, very odd, but I'm happy I'm old. Because some of these future sort of panoramas, they don't look very bright.
I agree, but some of us who are, first of all, I think you need the first 100 years just to figure out the basics of what's going on.
Yeah.
Right. And some of us who are already old, it might be good for us to stay around if we can help.
Well, yeah, but still, I'm happy I'm not that young as you are, for instance. So I don't need to stay around as much longer, so.
Yeah, well, I don't know. This is a challenging situation, but I think there's a lot of great people scattered around the world. And part of what we need to do is be in touch with each other, right?
Well, as you said before, the future is definitely not dark from that point of view. I mean, every day I have like 20, 30, 40 emails of an extreme high mental and intelligence quality. Okay. People are very, very clever, very intelligent. They have so many good ideas, so many good projects. And it's stressful in a sense because you realize that there is a mental power out there. If it could be put into action, we could solve these issues, but it would also change the world, but not according to the current politics and economics, but in a completely different way. And maybe that's what people in power are afraid of course.
Oh, I think so. Yeah. But it's also the chess puzzle that we need to solve.
Yeah.
So
I'm working on it,
Good.
And you are too. I know that.
I am too, and I think we should be able to do that.
Yeah.
So we just need to encourage each other, right?
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, indeed.
Anyway, and if people want to get in touch with you, then your email address, again, one more time. What is that?
Olle dot, that's OLLE dot Johansson, JOHANSSON, directly followed without the dot with the numbers 500 at gmail.com.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. I'll continue some good conversations.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
and I would like to ask anyone to keep their emails as short as possible.
Yeah, if you have that many, you don't need to be...
Yeah, I get so very many, but I promise I will answer them. But if they are very lengthy, it could take quite some time.
Just make it short and concise, and that way you still get some time to go out and meet the animals. And
well, I have a neighbor with a fantastic terrier, and every time I meet this dog, he is so happy, and he has bitten my clothes to pieces actually because he wants to bite
and not let you go away too.
Yeah, he loves meeting me, So
I think in a lot of ways the animals are far more advanced than humans.
Indeed,
the animals almost never destroy the world and stuff like that.
I mean, I usually say when I give lectures that, have you ever seen a giraffe with a machine gun?
I don't think so.
No, you don't.
Probably not any of the other animals.
People, they really react and realize that, the only problem here on this planet is actually spelled mankind.
Yeah, and we could have a whole other conversation on this too, because so many of these subjects, there's a valid issue like, the problem is mankind, and therefore mankind needs to become conscious, self-aware, and into its real potential. The bad guys say the problem is mankind, so we just have to kill you all.
No. I mean,
different approaches.
I mean, what you said first is the way out of it,
Yeah.
consciousness is so important.
Right. Right. A lot better path. Anyway, thanks for giving us so much time.
Well,
And
it's an honor.
have a good night.
Well, the same. Thank you so. Bye then.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.